SharePoint lists are a database for Power Apps. Incorrect. That belief is why your apps stall at 2,000 records, choke on filters, and die behind a friendly blue delegation banner. Most teams discover the cliff at 5,000 items and then spend weeks patching symptoms. Here's the promise. You'll see the architectural why behind those failures, the measurable breakdowns, delegation warnings, load times, record counts, and the decision thresholds that separate toy apps from production systems. I'll give you the red flag that predicts collapse before you write a single formula. And yes, we'll talk cost, governance, and migration, so IT leaders can justify Dataverse without glitter. The architectural mismatch, why SharePoint breaks at scale. SharePoint was built for content and collaboration. Documents, pages, conversations, basic lists. It's excellent at that. But a Power App is a data application. It needs a data platform that speaks relationships, delegation, and server-side execution. The truth, SharePoint isn't that platform. Let's state the stakes. When Power Apps can't delegate a query, it pulls data to the client and evaluates locally. That's fast in demos and catastrophic at scale. SharePoint's delegation surface is narrow. Simple filter and sort on indexed columns, sure. But the moment you stack conditions, search multiple columns, or try distinct group by lookup chains, you fall off the delegation cliff. Your app silently caps results at 500 by default, 2000 if you stretch the setting. Everything past that, invisible. Not filtered, not counted, gone. Compare that to Dataverse. Dataverse is designed for structured relational data with server-side query execution. Filters, joins via relationships, aggregates, processed where the data lives. You get results for 200,000 rows the same way you do for 2,000 because the server does the work. It's not just a database, it's the spine of the Power Platform's data model. Now the flat list problem. SharePoint gives you a list with limited lookups. You can't model rich relationships without hacks. The thing most people miss is that every workaround, denormalizing data into giant columns, duplicating text keys, using Power Automate to stitch records, magnifies maintenance and erodes integrity. And once you join across lists with lookups, you invite non-delegable patterns. The price isn't just complexity, it's performance collapse. Let me show you exactly how the list view threshold enforces behavior. SharePoint can technically store up to tens of millions of items in a list, but the practical guardrail is 5,000 per query. Past that, unindexed filters block, groupings time out. Sorting on non-indexed fields fails. You can index some columns, yes, but not your way out of combinatorial filters. The platform is protecting the shared service, not optimizing your app. You don't beat the threshold, you root around it until your logic buckles. Security makes it worse. Item-level permissions sound helpful until you apply them at scale. SharePoint must evaluate access for each item in a view. That's extra work on every query, view, and app screen. In Dataverse, row and field-level security are evaluated as part of the data engine's plan. Business units, security roles, auditing, all native, all performant. The reason this matters is simple. Security filtering is still filtering. If it's not efficient, your app pays the tax every tap. And now load time. Power Apps does a lot under the hood: metadata retrieval, control initialization, data source negotiation. In 2025, runtime improvements reduced unnecessary parallel queries and sped up rendering, which helps everyone, but it doesn't fix a source that demands client-side evaluation. If your first screen opens with filter search against a SharePoint list that won't delegate, you're shipping a spinner, not a screen. Dataverse benefits most from those optimizations because the platform cooperates. Fewer round trips, more server execution, cleaner payloads. The game changer nobody talks about is how relational intent changes everything. In Dataverse, relationships are first class. You can traverse them, query across them, and secure them. In SharePoint, relationships are lookups with training wheels. That's fine for a project tracker. It's fragile for ticketing, assets, orders, inspections, or anything with multi-table joins and lifecycle rules. If you remember nothing else, remember this: SharePoint lists are excellent content shelves. Power Apps need a data engine. For simple, flat scenarios, SharePoint is fine. The moment you need multi-lookup joins, compound filters, or more than trivial record counts, the platform fights you, and you will lose. The failure modes. You can measure delegation, load time, record counts. Let's quantify the pain. You don't need a hunch, you need artifacts. Power Apps gives you 3: delegation warnings, load time behavior, and record count realities. If you ignore them, your users will provide a 4th artifact: abandonment. Delegation first. That cheerful blue banner is not advice, it's a stop sign. When you see this formula might not be fully delegable, translation: Power Apps will evaluate locally and cap your results. Default cap 500, stretch setting 2000. The truth, you've just limited your app's eyesight to a tiny slice of reality. Anything past that window doesn't exist as far as your formulas can tell. Filters, mismatches, counts under report, and no results found becomes a regular comedy bit. Which operations trigger this collapse in SharePoint? The usual suspects: chaining filter with or across multiple columns, using search on more than one field, distinct for deduplication, group by for rollups, lookup chains across lists, and certain sort by columns scenarios when the sort column isn't indexed. Add a multi-lookup join, and you're basically choosing the non-delegable path on purpose. Compare that to Dataverse, where those same filters, sorts, and relationship traversals run server-side. You request intent, the engine executes the plan efficiently. Now load time, the spin attacks. 3 mechanics matter: metadata fetch, control rendering, and query execution. The 2025 runtime optimizations helped with caching and deferred control loading, plus a smoother UI pipeline. Good. But if your first interaction is a non-delegable query against SharePoint, you force the client to pull what it can, then process. And that means chatty network calls, inflated payloads, and a device doing work the server should have handled. You feel it as screens that take seconds to render and galleries that pop in results unpredictably. A microstory since you enjoy pain: a field service app with 120,000 tickets, 3 lookups per ticket, and user-scoped views. SharePoint worked, until it didn't. Delegation banners everywhere, views timing out when item-level permissions scaled up, and a home screen that loaded in 8 seconds on Wi-Fi and whenever it felt like it on cellular. Migration to Dataverse dropped the home screen to under 2 seconds because the filters ran at the source and security-trimmed rows server-side. No heroics, just using the right engine. Record counts next, the myth of it stores 30 million. Yes, a list can hold that many items. No, your app can't use them meaningfully if you need complex filtering. The list view threshold of 5,000 isn't negotiable. It's a guardrail that blocks unindexed queries, grouping, and certain sorts once your operations threaten the service. You can index columns, and you should, but you can't index your way out of combinatorial filters or ad hoc user searches across multiple fields. Practically, SharePoint list-backed apps stay sane below 100,000 items with disciplined views and strict patterns. Beyond that, the workaround text compounds: extra flows, calculated columns, denormalized text copies, and nightly jobs to fake rollups. Security-induced slowness is the stealth killer. Item-level permissions feel enterprise. In practice, every view and query pays a per-item evaluation cost. Performance drops, especially as unique permissions climb. Dataverse applies row-level and field-level rules within the engine's plan, so the filter is part of the query, not a separate gauntlet. Result: less thrash, more throughput, consistent response times as complexity grows. Let's talk query complexity tax in practical terms. You want a gallery filtered by status, date range, and a free text search across title and description, then sorted by priority. In SharePoint, parts of that stack are non-delegable or brittle unless you pre-index exactly the combination users hit. In Dataverse, it's delegable and runs on the server, so the client receives only the right rows in the right order. You save network, CPU, and your dignity. Quick win you can do today. Audit your app for blue banners, count of indexed columns versus filters in use, first screen load time on cold start, and effective record window, 500, 2000, or truly delegable. If any core screen relies on non-delegable filters, you already have silent data loss. Not theoretical, current. The takeaway is painfully simple. Delegation warnings predict wrong results. Load time patterns reveal where you forced the client to do server work. Record counts expose the difference between can store and can query. When all 3 line up, you don't have a performance problem. You have an architectural mismatch. Dataverse isn't premium flair. It's the minimum viable data engine for apps that must scale, stay honest, and avoid the blue banner lottery. The Dataverse advantage: performance, delegation, security, integration. Now that you've seen where SharePoint collapses, enter Dataverse, the data engine that actually speaks Power Apps' native language. The truth: you're not buying features, you're buying the right physics. Server-side execution, proper relationships, and security baked into the query plan. That's why it feels faster. It is faster. Performance first. Dataverse executes filters, sorts, and joins on the server close to the data. You're not dragging thousands of rows to a phone and hoping JavaScript performs miracles. With the 2025 runtime improvements, better metadata caching, deferred control loading, reduced chatty calls, Dataverse gains more because it cooperates. One intent, one efficient plan, one clean payload. Screens render predictably because the server sends exactly what the UI needs, not a haystack for the client to comb. Delegation coverage is the headline act. The thing most people miss is that Dataverse wasn't retrofitted for delegation. It was designed that way. Multi-column filters, relationship traversals, sorted result sets, distincts, even aggregations, delegable. You describe the slice, the platform cuts it server-side. That's why the 2000 record setting stops mattering. You're no longer peering through a keyhole. You're looking at the full data set with a proper lens. And if you remember nothing else, Dataverse turns maybe delegable into yes by default. Let me show you exactly how relationships change the game. In Dataverse, tables relate via defined lookups with referential integrity. Query across account orders, order lines, normal. Security across those joins, included. In SharePoint, that's duct tape and non-delegable chains. In Dataverse, it's the plan. You get consistent response times because the engine knows how to optimize across normalized structures. You also stop duplicating columns just in case, which is where SharePoint apps quietly go to die. Security is where Dataverse stops being premium and becomes non-negotiable. Row level, field level, and business unit scoping run in the data engine. Least privilege isn't a suggestion, it's enforceable without wrecking performance. Auditing is built in, so you can answer who viewed or changed what without bolting on spreadsheets and prayers. And yes, it rides on Entra ID, TLS in transit, encryption at rest, the enterprise basics you'd expect. SharePoint's item-level security tries, Dataverse governs. Integration is not a bullet point, it's the runway. Dataverse is the hub for Power Platform, Power BI, and AI workloads. Want analytics? Directly query or export to data lake, no CSV gymnastics. Want AI or automation? You're already sitting on a structured governed store. And when you need external data, virtualization lets you project sources like PostgreSQL into Dataverse without copying every byte. You build one model, one app, one security story, minus the mass duplication that turns governance into folklore. Offline and mobile, this is where delegation and sync meet. Because Dataverse queries delegate, you can define compact user scope datasets and actually sync them. The client isn't pretending to be a database, it's holding a curated cache. That's why grids feel responsive on weak connections and why updates reconcile rather than collide. SharePoint's offline story is, try not to breathe on it. One more signal you should not ignore. Microsoft's modern workloads are moving to Dataverse. Planner Premium built on Dataverse wasn't a cute experiment, it's a declaration. When the vendor builds its own data-heavy services on a platform, they're telling you where the road is paved. Common mistake to avoid, treating Dataverse like SharePoint but expensive. You don't buy it to store rows. You buy it to execute intent at scale, secure data correctly, and integrate without heroics. That's the ROI. Fewer workarounds, fewer throttling meltdowns, fewer blue banner debates in stand-ups. So yes, Dataverse costs. And yet, compared to weeks of Power Automate crutches, denormalized hacks, and governance nightmares, it's the cheaper choice. The efficient choice, the adult choice, the cost reality, licensing, hidden workarounds, and total cost of ownership. Let's talk money without the glitter. SharePoint looks free because it's bundled with Microsoft 365. Dataverse is premium. The average user stops there and congratulates themselves on frugality. Fascinating. Now let's add the parts they never costed. Workarounds, reliability losses, security compensations, and migration rework. The truth? Free becomes your most expensive line item. Licensing first. Yes, Dataverse requires premium licensing and storage. You pay predictable, budgetable dollars for a platform that delegates, scales, and secures correctly. With SharePoint, you pay in people hours. Days building Power Automate crutches to replace missing relationships, hours debugging non-delegable formulas, nights rerunning failed flows, weekends explaining to auditors why you can't produce field-level access logs. Those aren't features, they're payroll burning. Hidden SharePoint costs are everywhere. Denormalization to dodge lookups, now you maintain duplicate values across lists and pray someone remembers to keep them in sync. Calculated columns to fake rollups. Welcome to recalculation delays and brittle logic that explodes when the list crosses thresholds. Power Automate to simulate joins, that's a pipeline of async band-aids, throttling, retries, partial failures, and reconciliation scripts. Each new workaround increases complexity, fragility, and the blast radius of small changes. Reliability is its own ledger. Delegation warnings don't just slow you down, they make you wrong. Undercounted records, missed matches, and views that silently exclude data are not performance issues, they're integrity failures. Users learn the app can't be trusted and defect to spreadsheets. Meanwhile, you're paying for triage meetings, quick fixes that add even more non-delegable logic, and the reputational tax of shipping tools that lie. Security governance has a price tag too. SharePoint's item-level permissions look cheap until you scale. Evaluation per item drags performance, unique permissions multiply, and reporting becomes archaeology. To reach parity with Dataverse's built-in auditing and role models, you assemble logs, manual reviews, and after-the-fact detective controls. In Dataverse, row and field-level security, auditing, and business units are native, aligned with least privilege, enforced in the query plan, and measurable. That alignment saves both hours and incidents. Risk-adjusted math is where the free fallacy collapses. Count the cost of throttled flows causing stale data, blue banner bugs producing wrong decisions, and slow screens that waste minutes per user per day. Multiply by headcount and months, add one compliance event or an app abandonment cycle that triggers a rewrite. That total dwarfs the premium license. And yes, the 2025 platform optimizations, better caching, fewer chatty calls improve everyone's baseline, but Dataverse converts those gains into sustained throughput, while SharePoint still funnels complex logic into the client. Budget framing for IT leaders is simple. Premium spend buys scale, governance, and fewer engineering fire drills. It buys delegable queries, so your devs stop playing Formula Whack-a-Mole. It buys auditing that satisfies auditors without a scavenger hunt. It buys security that performs and a model that integrates with Power BI and AI without exporting CSVs like it's 2009. Essentially, you're trading capricious maintenance for predictable operations. Migration effort belongs in the ROI too. Moving a data-centric app from SharePoint to Dataverse, schema mapping, relationships, roles, data loads, refactoring flows, and swapping connectors costs real time. But it's a one-time project that retires a recurring tax. After migration, new features accrue faster because you're building on a platform designed for your use case, not battling thresholds and non-delegable landmines. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Dataverse is a line item. SharePoint workarounds are an annuity. One you approve once, the other you pay forever. Choose the expense that stops the bleeding. Decision framework, thresholds, red flags, and migration paths. You want a line you can defend in a design review. Here it is. Choose Dataverse when any of the following are true. Your list will exceed 100,000 items. Users need compound filters or multi-column search. You have more than 1 or 2 lookups per record. Offline is required, or security must be granular at the row or field level with auditing. Cross any one threshold and SharePoint stops being included and starts being expensive. Now the red flags that predict collapse before you write a single formula. Persistent blue delegation banners anywhere in core user flows. Repeated use of non-delegable functions. Search across multiple fields. Group by distinct, chained lookup, filter with OR across columns, lists with item-level permissions applied broadly, views that intermittently time out or refuse to sort unless perfectly indexed, throttling or cannot complete this operation messages near the 5,000 item mark. If you see 2 or more red flags during prototyping, you're already in rewrite territory. Governance triggers are straightforward. Do you need auditing that answers who saw or changed what? Do you need least privilege access by business unit, role, and field? Do you have segregation of duties constraints or regulated data classes? Those are Dataverse native. Trying to bolt them onto SharePoint guarantees performance drag and compliance busy work. Performance triggers are the user-facing tells. First screen cold start exceeds 3 seconds on Wi-Fi. Gallery interactions stutter when filters stack. Search latency varies wildly across users. View operations fail unless you micromanage indexes weekly. The truth? You've offloaded data work to the client. Dataverse fixes that by executing intent where the data lives. Decision path succinct. If the app is simple, flat, and disposable, think small trackers, light task boards, contact lists. Keep it on SharePoint and enforce strict patterns. Indexed filters, single field search, minimal lookups, no item-level security. Everything else, especially data-centric apps with life cycles, moves to Dataverse proactively. Don't wait for the blue banner to become a help desk legend. Migration isn't mystical, it's methodical. Start with schema mapping. Identify lists, columns, and lookups, then normalize into Dataverse tables with relationships you actually want. Define primary keys and alternate keys where you previously faked uniqueness with text columns. Next, design security roles and business units to match how access should work, not how it evolved. Translate item-level hacks into proper row and field permissions. Data load comes next. Export clean, deduplicated data from SharePoint. Load parent tables first, then children, respecting relationships. Validate counts and spot-check joins. While data moves, refactor Power Automate flows, replace list actions with Dataverse triggers and actions, drop any compensating steps that existed only to work around missing joins, and consolidate error handling. In the app, swap connectors, rewrite non-delegable formulas into delegable queries, and remove calculated column crutches you no longer need. Where you previously copied text to denormalize, use relationships and views. Then test for delegation at every screen. No blue banners allowed. If you see one, change the formula or adjust the data model. Don't ship mostly delegable. That's just sometimes wrong. Risk controls during migration keep your weekends quiet. Segment environments. Dev, test, prod. So data and security can be validated without surprises. Run a phased cutover, pilot a user group on the Dataverse version while SharePoint remains read-only as the interim source of truth, then flip once parity is proven. Monitor with telemetry, track load times, query counts, and delegation status. Establish rollback only for catastrophic issues. Otherwise, fix forward. On the platform built to scale, a final threshold many miss if you're authoring flows to pre-compute rollups, joining lists with Power Automate, or exporting to CSV for analytics, you've already paid more in workarounds than a premium license. The adult move is to stop paying that annuity and migrate. Key takeaway. SharePoint lists are content shelves. Dataverse is a data engine that delegates, secures, and scales. Use the right tool once your app needs relationships, complex filters, or honest counts. Adopt the thresholds and red flags you heard, audit your apps this week, and escalate migrations before users feel the spin attacks. If you want the schema mapping walkthrough and a delegation deep dive, subscribe and turn on notifications. Choose structure over entropy. Move the data to Dataverse and stop arguing with blue banners.